Hi everybody, welcome to week 3 of Social Studies Online Learning. This week we will start our novel study of The Green Book by Jill Paton Walsh. An awesome book. We read the intro to it or the synopsis of it last week. I got a lot of great feedback from many of you saying you were excited to read the book. I think one or two of you said you've heard of it or you've read it. Some of you are worried that it could be sad or have a lot of kind of heavy subjects going on in it, like death and things like that. And although I think it kind of alludes to that happening, it is a novel directed towards younger readers, so I don't think we're going to run into anything that's too depressing or heavy, but it does kind of tie into what we're experiencing in the world right now, and that's major changes on Earth, right? And so we're going to see some of those things happen here, but on a much more futuristic kind of scale. So I'm excited to get started. Hopefully you've looked through the rest of the assignment this week that has basically you're going to see, and you'll have already found it if you're watching this, is the link to the YouTube video of me reading chapter 1. And also a PDF link that gives you all the pages from chapter 1 in one PDF. So you can print that out and read along with me, or you can pull it up side by side to this video and read along virtually. And then the last things you're going to find in this week's assignments are 2 links to 2 different documents that go with chapter 1. The first one looks something like this. It says Application for Exploration of New Colonies. And what I'd like you to do now is, if you haven't already looked at this front page here, take a look at it now. Pause the video. Take a look at this. Fill it out if you can. Just the first part of it, just the application for exploration on the, we'll say the first link that you'll see in the Google Classroom assignment. And then on the back, for me it's the back, for you it'll be the second page, you'll see chapter 1. This is just some more kind of thinking about what you would do if you were in their shoes, and then the bottom part is looking at some of the vocabulary we're going to come across. I'd like you to make sure you get this done this week, because this vocabulary is going to come up throughout the book, and it's important that you know these terms. Now, because you have a computer, I know you can find the definitions to this vocabulary, but use your prior knowledge. You may know some of these words without having to look them up, okay? And then the second assignment, the second link, is going to be to some questions that look like this. Now, these are more reflection questions that are going to go with chapter 1 as well. So these are your 2 assignments in the links. Feel free to do them in the links in the Google Doc. If you want to print it out and do the docs written, that's fine too. I'm not collecting this, but remember, if you do it written and you print it out and you do it by hand, I can't see that and I can't give you feedback. So if you do want feedback on what you write, do it right within the doc. I'm going to make a copy for everybody, so we can do it that way. All right, so if you're done filling out your application, that's your number 1 before we even start reading. I want you to fill out your application. You don't have to do the second page. You don't have to do this other one yet. You'll do that after the reading. But as long as you've paused this video, filled out your application, we can get started, okay? So I'm going to start by showing you again the front of the book. It's The Green Book by Jill Paton Walsh. As we open it up, you'll see The Green Book, Jill Paton Walsh, for Robert, Matthew, and Kate. All right, and here we go with chapter 1. So hopefully you have your PDF pulled up or printed out in front of you, and you can follow along while I read aloud to you, okay? All right, chapter 1. Father said, we can take very little with us. The list was in his hand: spade, saw, file, axe for each family. Seeds, etc. will be provided. Iron rations will be provided. For each voyager, a change of clothing, a pair of boots, 1 or 2 personal items only, like a favorite cooking pan, a musical instrument, small and light, and a picture unframed. Nothing under this heading will be taken if it is bulky or heavy, fragile, or perishable. 1 book per voyager. It was easy to pack. We were allowed so little, and we didn't have to bother about leaving anything tidy behind us. Only the books caused a little delay. Father said, I must take this. He showed us an ugly big volume called A Dictionary of Immediate Technology. But you must choose for yourselves, he said. It couldn't be fair of me to choose for you, so think carefully. We didn't think. We were excited, disturbed, and we hadn't really understood that everything else would be left behind. Father looked wistfully at the shelves. He picked up the Oxford Complete Shakespeare. Have you all chosen your books? He asked. Yes, we told him. He put the Shakespeare back. We had time to waste at the end. We ate everything we could find. I don't want to eat iron, Patty said, but nobody knew what she meant. Then Father got out the slide projector, and he showed us pictures of holidays we had once had. We didn't think much of them. Have they all gone brownish with age, Dad? Said Joe, our brother, the eldest of us. No, said Father, the pictures are all right. It's the light that has changed. It's been getting colder and bluer now for years, but when I was young, it was this lovely golden color, just like this. Look. But what he showed us, a beach with a blue sea and the mother we couldn't remember lying on a towel reading a book, looked a funny hue, as though someone had brushed it over with a layer of treacle. Patty was glad that Father wasn't going to be able to take the slide projector. It made him sad. And the next day we all went away. Father and Joe and Sarah and Patty and lots of other families, and left the earth far behind. When this happened, we were all quite young, and Patty was so young that later she couldn't remember being on Earth at all, except those last hours, and even the journey was mostly forgotten. She could remember the beginning of the journey because it was just so exciting. When we could undo our seatbelts and look out the windows, the world looked like a Chinese paper lantern, all with painted lands upon it. And all the people on the ship looked at it, and some of the grown-ups cried. Father didn't cry. He didn't look either. When Joe went and talked to Father by and by, but Sarah and Patty stood at a porthole all day long and saw the world shrink and diminish down till it looked like a round, cloudy glass marble that you could have rolled on the palm of your hand. Patty was looking forward to going past the moon, but that was no fun at all, for the ship passed by the dark side, and we saw nothing of it. And then we were flying in a wide, black, starry sky where none of the stars had names. At first there were voices from the world below, but not for long. The disaster from which we were escaping happened much sooner than they had thought it would, and after 2 days the ship was flying in radio silence, alone and navigating with a calculator program on the computer and a map of magnetic fields. The journey was very boring. It was so long. The spaceship was big enough to frighten us when we thought of it flying through the void. Joe kept telling Patty not to worry. Heavy things don't fall down in space, he told her. There's nowhere for them to fall, no gravity. When I knock things over, they fall down, just like at home, Patty said doubtfully. That's just the ship's gravity machine making it happen inside the ship, said Joe, to make us feel normal. But the ship was small enough to frighten us too. When we thought of spending years inside of it, we will still be here when I'm 14, said Joe, as though he found that as hard to believe as Patty found the lack of gravity. Better get used to it then, said Sarah. We had pills to make us sleep a lot of the time, but the rules said everyone had to be awake some of each 48 hours. When people were awake, they played games, Monopoly and Go, Backgammon and chess and Mastermind and Space Invaders, which were all on the ship's computer and could be played with the video screens. And one of the grown-ups had even brought along as his special luxury a funny handset for playing chess, which let you play it with another person instead of with the computer. When we weren't playing games, we could read the books we had brought. Joe asked Father why there were no books to read on the computer screens. Father told us that all the new well-equipped spaceships belonged to big, wealthy countries. They had flown off to find distant, promising-looking planets. We were at the bottom of the barrel, he said, the last few to go from an old and poorer country, and only an old ship available and no time to outfit it properly. Our computer was intended for exploration journeys, not for colonization. It had no spare memory, it can barely manage our minimum needs, and there was so little fuel we couldn't get liftoff with anything extra on board. No useful livestock like sheep or cows, just ourselves and what the organizers thought we needed for survival. But we are lucky to be away at all. Remember, and they allocated us a much nearer destination so that our old ship could get us somewhere. There were some chickens in cages on the ship, with 2 very noisy cocks who had lost their sense of timing in the flight throughout darkness and crowed at all the wrong times when we were trying to sleep. And there were rabbits too. We could let them out and play with them. Rabbits are fun when you are very small and like furry things, but they aren't much fun really. You can't teach them tricks. All they ever think about is munching, and when we got bored with the rabbits, all we had was that one book each to go back to. Of course, we tried to read slowly. Read each sentence at least twice before you read another, the rule book said, under helpful suggestions. But Sarah couldn't read that slowly. At home, she read 4 or 5 books every week. She finished her book quickly and then wanted to borrow Patty's, but Patty wouldn't let her, so she swapped with Joe and read his. He had brought Robinson Crusoe. Sarah didn't much like Robinson Crusoe. "You'd better think about him, old girl," Joe said to her. "That island is just like where we're going, and we have to scratch a living on it just like Crusoe." "Well, I hope we don't have to pray and carry on like him," said Sarah. Joe didn't like Sarah's book any better than she liked his. Hers was called The Pony Club Rides Again. Joe didn't like horses, and he couldn't resist telling Sarah that, after all, she would never see a horse again as long as she lived. So then they both wanted to borrow Patty's book, but Patty wouldn't lend it. "I haven't finished it myself yet," she kept saying. "It's not fair. You finished yours before you had to lend it." In the end, Father made her give it to them. It was thin and neat, with dark green silky boards covered with gold tooling. The edges of the pages were gilded and shiny. It had a creamy silk ribbon to mark the place, and pretty brown and white flowered end papers. And it was quite empty. "There's nothing in it," cried Sarah, staring. "It's a commonplace book," said Joe. "What's that?" asked Sarah. "A sort of jot or notebook thing for thoughts you want to keep." And she's been pretending to read it for months," said Sarah, beginning to giggle. They both laughed and laughed. Other people came by and asked what the joke was. Everyone laughed. "Oh, Patty, dear child," said Father when he heard about it. He didn't laugh. He looked a mixture between sad and cross. "It was my choose," said Patty very fiercely, taking her book back and holding it tight. Father said she was too young. I should have chosen for her, but no use crying over spilt milk. We did get used to being on the ship, and in the end, a funny thing happened to the way people felt about it. At first, everyone had hated it, grumbled all the time about tiny cubicles, about no exercise, about nothing to do. They had quarreled a lot. Grown-up quarreling isn't very nice. We were luckier than most families. We didn't seem to quarrel, though we got very cross and scratchy about things, just like other people. But time went by, and people settled down to playing games and sleeping and talking a little, and got used to it. So when at last everyone had had 4 birthdays on the ship, and the journey had been going on for what seemed like forever and ever, and the guide told us all there were only months to go now, people were worried instead of glad. "We shall be lucky if we can walk more than 3 steps. We're so flabby," said Father. And people began to do push-ups in their cabins and line up for a turn on the cycle machine for exercising legs. Joe began to ask a lot of questions. He didn't like the answers he got, and he talked to Patty and Sarah about it after lights out and sleeping times. "They just don't know what this place is going to be like," he told them. "They think it should support life. They know there is plant growth on it, and they suppose that means we could grow wheat. But there may be wild animals or any kind of monster people on it already. They don't know. Couldn't there possibly be wild ponies, Joe? Asked Sarah. No, sis, I don't think so, said Joe very kindly. And if this place isn't any good, we can't go anywhere else. The fuel won't last. All they've got for us, if it isn't any good, are pills. I don't want to take pills, said Patty. Well, we'll have to if all the others are taking them, Sarah told her. We couldn't be left alone. I think we ought to be allowed to choose, said Patty. Oh, Patty, said Joe, grinning at her from his bunk. You're a fine one to talk about choosing. What good is your choosing, you goose? And that is the end of chapter 1. So now you can go back to your 2 documents and work on those throughout the rest of the week. You can break them up, do a little day by day. You can come back and watch the recording if you want to hear the story again. You can read your PDF if you want to go through that again. You can print out your PDF if you like to have a hard copy. And then next week, I'll be uploading again, same style, PDF for chapter 2, maybe 3, but I'm looking at doing a chapter a week unless we run into some really short chapters. And then, as always, I will upload as well some documents to go with it, probably 2 documents per week to go with it. And then you can turn those in when you have them done, and I will give you feedback. And we'll do some discussion type stuff as well in our thread on our homepage. What I'm going to try to do in the future is schedule the live readings, my live readings of the book to you through Google Meets, which is a kind of a hangout type space on that we can post in Google Classroom. And then I can try to get a feature turned on where I can record the Google Meets and then post them into Google Classroom, just like I'm doing with the YouTube videos, so that people can watch them later if they can't come to the live stream of it. But that is something on the horizon. Hopefully it happens. And I will post later in the week some discussion, thoughtful questions on our Google homepage in a thread talking about the Green Book, but that will be after you've had time to go back and read it if you want and fill out your work. So I will see and talk to you guys soon. Hope you're having a good week. Stay healthy. Miss you guys. Talk to you soon.